Bakit ako maliit? Pwede pa ba akong tumangkad?
Kapag tinitignan mo ang sarili sa salamin simula ulo hanggang paa, napapansin mo bang hindi ka ganoon katangkad? Kumpara sa iba, napapansin mo bang ikaw ay naiiba? Ang top 3 global average heights ng mga babae ay ang mga sumusunod: Latvia, the Netherlands, at ang pinakauli ay ang Guatemala, ang Pilipinas at ang Bangladesh. Ang Pilipinas ay pangalawa sa pinakamaliit. But please don't give up! Mayroon pa din tayong katulad na height sa ibang bansa sa Westerners. Katulad ng Latvia, ang pagkakaroon ng matangkad na height ay pinapangarap ng karamihan sa atin. Na-discover ng German scientist ang 2 kinds of natural substances that promote the secretion of growth hormone HGH. Ang unang uri nito ay ang small molecules of phospholipid A-glycerol, isang uri ng wheat glutamine peptide na confirmed na ang AGPC ay kayang isecrete ang HGH hanggang 44 times. Wheat oligopeptide GP naman ay kayang isecrete ang HGH nearly 5 times. Paris Kid, doktor ng medisina, ay pinapoint out na ang AGPC ay kayang i-increase ang GHRH. GHRH ay kayang i-increase ang secretion ng HGH. Kahit na sa mga matatanda, ang secretion ng HGH ay kayang mag-increase ng hanggang 3 times. Ang wheat oligopeptide ay nagko-consist ng 18 kinds of 2 to 10 amino acids. Kaya nito i-increase ang content ng serotonin at muscle choline na papabilis ang muscle growth at ang pagbaburn ng fats. Ang kaimportante ay ang GP na kayang mag-promote ng secretion ng growth hormone. Ang pinakabagong formula ng Gloxy, dinadagdagan ang AGPC at GP, ang dalawang height enhancement active components na tumutulong para sirain ang limitation ng growth at i-improve ang kakulangan ng HGH secretion sa maiksing panahon.
Ang pagiging matangkad ng isang tao ay maraming pakinabang. Halimbawa, may kakayahan kang maging superior sa lahat. Madali ka ding maging leader sa isang grupo. Mabilis makakuha ng trabaho dahil sa high requirements o kaya high social status, at dagdag pa sa pagkakaroon ng appeal ang pagkakaroon ng mahabang buhok. Isa pa sa advantage ng pagiging matangkad ay bagay sa iyo lahat ng uri ng damit. Naiinggit ang iba sa mga taong kaya magsuot ng maiiksing shorts. Advantage din ito na kapag nakaupo ka sa mataas na upuan, abot mo pa din ang flat surface ng sahig. Pagsakay din sa bicycle ay wala din problema. Kahit gaano pa ito kataas, ang mga matatangkad na lalaki ay kaya makakuha din ng matatangkad na babae, at kadalasan din itong naipapartner sa mga kasal.
Tama yun! 78% na ng mga employers ang naniniwala na ang matatangkad na salesperson ay mas convincing at madaling maka-impress ng mga customers nila. Ang German government research on national medical examinations taxation ay pinakita na for every inch na nadagdag sa height ng taon ay mas maraming business opportunity at income ang umi-increase ng 9 to 15%. In 30s, ang may same na age ay umaabot ng 6.5% o higit pa, at sa babae naman ay umaabot ng 10%. Ayon sa pag-aaral ng Princeton University, ang mga lalaki na may height na 177 cm at ang mga babae na may height na 162 cm ay may mas mataas na happiness index kaysa sa pagkakaroon ng anxiety at depression. Ang newest formula ng Gloxy ay isang HGH promoter na tamang-tama sa lahat. It contains the latest alpha GPC as well as glutamine peptide. Ang pag-increase ng growth hormone ay nagre-reduce din ang pagbuo ng fats, kaya natural lang na tumatangkad at pumapayat ng kaunti. Experts explained na ang dahilan kung bakit ang alpha GPC ay nagre-reduce ng adipose tissue ay dahil pinopromote nito ang content ng serotonin at muscle choline sa katawan na kalaunan ay magiging body fat. Habang nagdi-decrease ang body fat from 0.72 kg to 2.78 kg, ang maximum body weight na kayang i-reduce ay 8.7%. Kaya ang pagtangkad at pagpayat ay ang pangunahing epekto ng alpha GPC at GP. Kasama ang proper diet, tulog at exercise ay may magandang epekto sa epiphyseal cartilage cells, growth hormone stimulation, continuous rapid growth na patuloy na magbibigay ng growth sa leg bone, and you can continually grow taller centimeter by centimeter.
Kahit ilang taon na ang nakalipas, naaalala ko pa rin ang aking anak. Yung pambubuli ng ibang bata sa kanya. Sa aking kapatid na may pareho kaming sitwasyon sa anak niya, ibinahagi ko ang tungkol sa Gloxy. Bumili naman siya nito. At sa ngayon, tumangkad ang kanyang anak at achieve ang kanyang dream height nila.
Oo nga. Buti na lang, nariyan ang ate ko na nag-share ng epekto ng Gloxy sa anak niya. Na talaga namang tumangkad. Dahil dito, naisipan ko rin gumamit ng Gloxy para sa anak ko at kitang-kita ang epekto nito. Kaya lang, back in the days na hindi mo pa na-share sa akin ang paggamit ng Gloxy, lagi kong iniisip, di naman kailangan maging matangkad o hindi naman kailangan maging mataas ang score niya sa exam niya at iba pang activities ng school. But one time, naisip kong bisitahin siya sa school niya at nakita kong tinutukso siya ng classmates niya. At hindi siya confident na kasama ang classmate niya. Masakit makita ang anak ko na ganun. Kaya, pinasubo ko sa kanya ang paggamit ng Gloxy. Hindi ko inaasahan na tumangkad siya ng 8 centimeters sa isang taon. Kaya, pinagpatuloy ko ang paggamit ng Gloxy Health Drink. Halika, anak!
Diba? Kita?
Diba? Buong dagdag sa height niya ay 15 centimeters. Mula sa 160 centimeters na naging 175 centimeters na. Ang galing nga eh. Di lang tumangkad ang anak ko, naging malakas pa ang kanyang katawan. Maraming salamat sa Gloxy.
Gana ko nakatangkad ngayon. Tingnan ko nga, tayo ka.
Tita, dati ganyan lang ako kaliit. Ngayon, malaki na ako.
Ang laki ng tinangkad mo, ha?
Kaya nga, tita.
Makakasali ka na sa basketball.
Pwede na, tita.
Pangarap ko simula nung maliit pa lang ako ay maging isang stewardess. Makapunta sa iba't ibang bahagi ng bansa. Ngunit simula nung maliit ako, ay hindi talaga ako matangkad. Nung high school ako, ay 150 centimeters lang yung height ko. Noon pa, hinahangaan ko yung iba kong mga kaklase. At madalas akong humanap ng paraan upang maging matangkad. Pero yung height ko parang na-frozen. Yung tipong hindi man lang tumangkad kahit 1 centimeter. Nung nag-college ako, bumili si mama ng Gloxy Health Drink. Nag-surf ako sa internet. Nakita kong marami talagang gumagamit nito at tumatangkad talaga sila. Kaya sinubukan ko. Pagdating ng 6 na buwan, napansin ko nagsisimula na akong tumangkad. Kahit na paunti-unti, pero alam kong tumatangkad ako. Kaya pinagpatuloy ko ang pag-inom ng Gloxy Health Drink. Nung pag-graduate ko ng college, yung ground crew height ko ay naging stewardess ground height na. Mula 150 centimeters, naging 168 centimeters. Tumangkad ako ng 18 centimeters, di ba? Napakagaling. Pero syempre, nagtapos ako at naging stewardess. At yung pangarap ko, natupad din. Pero patuloy ko pa din akong gumagamit ng Gloxy Health Drink. At palagi kong nare-rekomenda sa mga kaibigan kung gusto ring tumangkad gaya ko. Dahil alam ko yung feeling na yon. Kaya kung gusto mong tumangkad, uminom ka ng Gloxy Health Drink at makikita mong kaya mo ring tumangkad gaya ko.
Tama yun! Ang iyong interpersonal relationships ay magbabago. Gusto mo bang tumangkad? Gloxy ang may pinaka-epektibong formula pampatangkad. Ito ay may FDA, HACCP at may ISO certification. Meron itong millions na height improvement success stories. Nagpo-promote din ito ng HGH secretion ng 44 times. Ang wheat oligopeptide GP ay kaya mag-secrete ng HGH up to 5 times. At bibilis din ang speed growth. Depende sa nature ng human body ay nag-i-increase sa height ng 3 to 10 centimeters nang walang side effect. Pwede ito sa lalaki at babae at kahit anong edad pa. Kung napansin mo na ang parents mo ay maliit, gumamit ka na agad ng Gloxy para madagdagan ang iyong height. Also, dahil sa different growth at mabilis na pag-develop ng mga buto at muscles, may mararamdaman na konting sakit sa mga kasukasuan or growth soreness habang gumagamit. Dahil dyan, meron kaming free na Gloxy Soothing Gel na i-a-apply mo sa iyong hita at binti bago matulog. Naglalaman ito ng iba't ibang plant extracts para mapakalma ang mga nananakit na mga muscles. Para sa inyong kasiguraduhan, i-confirm ang bagong packaging ng Gloxy habang bumibili kayo. Tawag na at i-grab ang opportunity para tumangkad ka. Bumili na!
Mahalagang paalala, ang Gloxy ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamitin panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, mga Angeles. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila and Thailand. Hello, Gila.
Hello, good afternoon.
All right, on today's headlines. The Department of Foreign Affairs has raised crisis alert level 4 for all areas in Ukraine, paving the way for the implementation of the mandatory evacuation for all Filipinos. 3 groups of Filipino evacuees from war-torn Ukraine, along with their dependents, arrived in Manila Sunday. To avoid a possible conflict with China, President Duterte on Monday enjoined the next administration to honor the Philippines' commitment to the proposed joint oil exploration with China in the resource-rich West Philippine Sea. And in Indonesia, Bali scrapped quarantine for vaccinated tourists from more than 20 countries and reinforced visas on arrival as the Indonesian holiday island pushes ahead with the reopening after 2 years of COVID curbs. The Department of Foreign Affairs has raised crisis alert level 4 for all areas in Ukraine, paving the way for the implementation of the mandatory evacuation for all Filipinos. In an advisory on Monday, the DFA said the mandatory evacuation will be at the government's expense. Filipinos in Ukraine will be assisted by the Philippine Embassy in Poland and the Rapid Response Team, which are currently assisting Filipino nationals for repatriation and relocation, according to the DFA. The DFA has 4 alert levels: Alert Level 1, or the precautionary phase; Alert Level 2, or restriction phase; Alert Level 3, or voluntary repatriation phase; and Alert Level 4 for mandatory evacuation or repatriation. According to the DFA website, Alert Level 4 is issued when there is a large-scale internal conflict or full-blown external attack in the country. The United Nations needs safe passage to deliver humanitarian aid to conflict zones in Ukraine, according to a senior official with the organization telling the Security Council on Monday. First, let's listen in.
We need safe passage for humanitarian supplies into areas of active hostilities. Civilians in places like Mariupol, Kharkiv, Melitopol, and elsewhere desperately need aid, especially life-saving medical supplies, the kind that have been brought in these past days by WHO. Many modalities are possible, but it must take place in line with the parties' obligation under the laws of war.
First of all, Russia must stop violating the ceasefire arrangements aimed at ensuring rapid, safe, and unhindered passage through humanitarian corridors. It must put an end to spreading disinformation and manipulating the lives of civilians. Evacuation through humanitarian corridors is only possible when the ceasefire regime is fully upheld. The Ukrainian side is ready for that.
Ukrainian cities are under siege, under relentless Russian shelling. Hospitals are running out of supplies, food is dwindling, and civilian casualties are mounting, while the most vulnerable group, those with disabilities, the elderly, children, continue to bear the brunt of suffering. Unfortunately, Mr. Putin doesn't seem to be listening, and we are concerned that the world needs to be prepared for a very long and very difficult road ahead.
Existence, the fund didn't turn a blind eye to the bombardments of Donbass, to the territory of Donetsk and Lugansk, and the problems for children that came from this in terms of the humanitarian and psychological situation. We hope that this non-biased approach will continue in the future. We think that UNICEF's views should be based on reliable, tried and tested information. We welcome the reflection in the humanitarian plan of the dangerous fact of the mass proliferation on Ukrainian territory of small arms and light weapons, many of which have fallen into the hands of radical elements, including those who have been deliberately freed from prison. The consequences of this irresponsible step by Volodymyr Zelensky, who gave the order, are already clear. The number of civilian victims among civilians from the hands of the radicals is increasing day by day, first and foremost in Kiev. We have been drawing attention to this for a long time. We call on all colleagues in the Security Council to strictly keep in today's meeting to the humanitarian context of the situation in Ukraine. We've already had the opportunity to exchange political views on what's happening, and it's clear that our views diverge from yours, and that you continue to rely on the opinion of Ukrainian politicians and also doubtful or openly mendacious material from social networks in presenting the course and aims of our special operation in Ukraine in an unfavourable light. We once again we agree with the representative of Albania that there is an information war going on, more likely a disinformation war, and we would say that in the West, in the free world, where Russian information resources are being turned off and where any information which contradicts your version of events is not allowed to be broadcast.
The meeting came as Ukraine and Russia seek an agreement on creating humanitarian corridors out of pummeled cities as the civilian toll from the Russian assault mounts. Russia said Monday it would open humanitarian corridors on Tuesday from 0700 GMT, subject to Ukraine's approval, listing evacuation routes from Kiev as well as Mariupol, Kharkiv, and Sumy. Meanwhile, Ukrainians fled south towards Kiev across a bombed-out bridge as Russian forces continue to bombard the town of Irpin, northwest of the capital. We had no light at home, no light, no water. That is according to one resident as she holds her belongings tight. Let's take a look.
Просто у нас не было дома света, нет воды.
Дня 3.
Просто в подвале сидели под домом, в темноте. У нас там немножко продуктов было, но мы понимаем, нам никто их не привезет. И постоянно слышны взрывы, некоторые очень сильные, прям рядом. Попадали в соседние дома. Вот. Мы видели огонь, взрывы. Рядом с нашим домом стоят машины, в ней убитые люди. Вот. Ну, страшно очень.
Все, спасибо.
Meanwhile, 3 groups of Filipino evacuees from war-torn Ukraine, along with their dependents, arrived in Manila Sunday, according to the Department of Foreign Affairs. The latest arrivals came from the capital city of Kiev and other areas.
in the western part of Ukraine. The first group, consisting of 4 Filipino adults, 3 Filipino-Ukrainian children with their 3 Ukrainian mothers, arrived in the afternoon via a Qatar Airlines flight. The second group of 2 Filipino adults, a Filipino-Ukrainian child, and his Ukrainian mother arrived in the evening. The third group consists of 3 Filipinos who arrived in Manila on their own arrangements. The Philippine Honorary Consulate General in Kiev assisted the evacuees in traveling from Kiev to the western Ukrainian city of Lviv, while the Philippine Embassy in Warsaw provided for their transportation, accommodation, and meals. The embassy also made arrangements for their travel documents and visas, RT-PCR tests, and their eventual flights to Manila. And Russia earlier announced humanitarian corridors that would open in several Ukrainian cities on Monday after terrified civilians came under fire in 2 previous attempts and with Moscow's forces pummeling cities across the country. Let's listen in.
Сегодня с 10 утра московского времени объявлен режим тишины и открывается 6 гуманитарных коридоров. 1 из Киева в Гомель, 2 из Мариуполя в Запорожье и Ростов-на-Дону, 1 из Харькова в Белгород, 2 из Сум в Белгород и в Полтаву.
The decision was taken after a personal request by French President Emmanuel Macron, who spoke with Russia's Vladimir Putin on Sunday. 12 days of fighting have killed hundreds of civilians and wounded thousands. An unending stream of people, mostly women and children, has poured into neighboring countries in what the United Nations calls Europe's fastest-growing refugee crisis since World War II. 2 recent attempts to allow thousands of civilians to leave Mariupol have ended in disaster, with civilians under fire and both sides accusing each other of violations. On Sunday, a second evacuation attempt collapsed with the International Committee of the Red Cross saying some 100,000 or 200,000 people were trying to leave and warning of devastating scenes of human suffering in Mariupol.
Ukraine dismissed Moscow's offer to set up humanitarian corridors from several bombarded cities on Monday after it emerged some routes would lead refugees into Russia or Belarus. The Russian proposal of safe passage from Kharkiv, Kiev, Mariupol, and Sumy had come after terrified Ukrainian civilians came under fire in previous ceasefire attempts. Let's watch this.
Це неприйнятний варіант відкриття гуманітарних коридорів. Не поїдуть наші люди з Іванкова, з Димира, з Вишгорода, з-під Києва в Білорусь з тим, щоб потім літаками полетіти у Російську Федерацію.
Moscow's defense ministry had earlier Monday announced new plans for humanitarian corridors, with the defense ministry confirming a regime of silence had started at 700 GMT, but several routes led into Russia or its ally Belarus, raising questions over the safety of those who might use them. AFP journalists saw thousands of civilians early Monday fleeing the fighting via an unofficial humanitarian corridor in Irpin, a strategic suburb west of Kyiv. Russia unleashed another night of relentless attacks from air, land, and sea, compounding the humanitarian disaster that has pushed more than 1.5 million people across Ukraine's borders. 9 people were killed in the bombing of Vinnytsia Airport in central Ukraine Sunday, rescue services say. And today, the mayor of the town of Gostomel north of Kyiv is shot dead with 2 others while distributing bread and medicine, city officials say. Speaker Lord Alan Velasco on Monday said the House of Representatives is on standby in the event President Rodrigo Duterte calls for a special session of Congress to pass legislation suspending or reducing fuel excise taxes. He said the chamber is looking at all possible options to cushion the impacts of rising oil prices on Filipinos, including suspension or reduction of fuel excise taxes, especially in the wake of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Velasco said he expects the fuel crisis ad hoc committee to fully assess the economic impact of the drastic increase in oil prices and come up with recommendations on how the government can address the problems at the soonest possible time. He meanwhile lauded the government's move to provide fuel subsidies to sectors directly affected by rising oil prices. The government had announced it is preparing to release 2.5 billion Philippine pesos for a subsidy program providing fuel vouchers to qualified members of the public transport sector, on top of the 500 million Philippine pesos in fuel discounts for farmers and fisher folk. The Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, counseled palm for now as the price hike on basic necessities and prime commodities due to Ukraine-Russia conflict will only be felt after 3 months. At a Laging Handa briefing on Monday, Trade Undersecretary Ruth Castello said that they will not yet release an updated suggested detail or retail price bulletin to reflect the impact of the rising fuel prices on the manufacturing of goods.
We want to assure the public na ang presyo po ng mga pangunahing bilihin na intindihan natin na kahit sa ayaw natin at sa gusto magkakaroon po ng impact sa atin. Pero hindi pa po yan immediate, hindi pa yan sa ngayon. We're looking at the next 3 months bago po mag-epekto yung nangyayari sa Europe dito sa ating bansa. Kaya sana matapos, Yusek, para hindi tayo talaga maapektuhan ang presyo natin. We have enough supply, hindi po kailangan mag-panic ng mga tao, and we're also tempering kung meron mang price increases, inaalalayan din po natin para hindi masyadong bumulusok ang presyo kung sakali man. And if there's any observation sa labas, whether it's violation ng mga mandatory health protocols natin or sa presyo, pwede po silang tumawag sa atin sa DTI 1384 or mag-email po sa consumercare@dti.gov.ph.
Finance Secretary Carlos G. Dominguez III said the Philippine economy will likely be collateral damage and suffer indirect shocks on 4 major channels from the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Speaking before President Duterte and several cabinet members on Monday night, Dominguez said the Russia-Ukraine war will affect the country's commodity market, financial market, investments, and its fiscal health. Let's listen in.
Instead, the Philippine economy will likely be collateral damage. It is as if we are hit by a ricocheting bullet. First, oil and food prices are expected to go up, as Russia is the largest exporter of natural gas and wheat, trigo, okay? While Ukraine is the 4th largest exporter of corn. As the conflict continues, Ukraine and Russia's main trading partners, predominantly the European Union, will look to trade with other countries such as US and China, where we are buying both wheat and corn, thereby pushing up the prices of commodities in these markets as well. Second, the conflict will also likely cause a surge in interest rates or cost of borrowing, which was already expected to go up even prior to the crisis because of the US Fed's tightening monetary policies. The conflict will increase the perception of risk in investments. Third, investments are likely to decline or at least be on hold in the face of uncertainty which may cause investors from the West to be more conservative or postpone their planned investments. Once sanctions are imposed, it will take a long time for investor and consumer confidence to return to normal. Lastly, all the aforesaid economic impacts will likely require government support to protect our vulnerable citizens and the critical sectors most affected by the crisis, and this will stretch our budget even further. However, I would like to emphasize that we do not expect this crisis to last very long. However, there may be some lingering effects. This crisis may increase prices across several sectors and thereby cause our inflation rate to breach our target. But with the measures that we discussed at the Economic Development Cluster, and which Secretary Chua will present, we are confident that we will be able to keep the inflation within our target range of 2 to 4% and maintain our growth path of 7 to 9% this year.
Meanwhile, to avoid a possible conflict with China, President Rodrigo Roa Duterte on Monday enjoined the next administration to honor the Philippines' commitment to the proposed joint oil exploration with China in the resource-rich West Philippine Sea. Citing Russia's invasion of Ukraine and China's claims in Taiwan, Duterte said there are already so many flashpoints around the world that he did not want the Philippines to be involved in many conflicts. Let's listen in.
Namin ito sinasabi kong not so that hindi maalarma yung tao. Pero pinakadelikado ito ngayong nangyayari. Kasi pag may nagkamali dito, pag nabitawan yung mga nuclear warheads, problema talaga. Problema na. Alam mo, pinaalaala sa akin, hindi ko na sabihin kung sino, from China, sabi niya, di ba may usapan tayo na joint development yang sa Recto Reed sa Recto Bank. Huwag ganun. Yung original contracts natin, sundin natin. Ngayon, sabi, magpadala ng sundalo. Sabi ko, wala man kami sinabing padala sundalo. Sabi niya, just in case, magpadala kayo ng sundalo, magpadala rin kami ng sundalo. So, alam mo, yan ang iniiwasan ko noon pa eh. Tapos magkagera tuloy tayo dito, nandoon sa Ukraine, nandyan yung Taiwan, gustong agawin uli ng China. Tapos dito, so many flashpoints, maraming lugar na may putok. We do not need it. Hindi natin kailangan makipag-away dyan. Sundin lang ninyo kung ano yung pinag-usapan noon. Honor yan eh. It's a matter of honor. We gave our consensual talks. Tapos may written agreement. Pag iniba yan, delikado.
He said although the Philippines and China may not be able to have a peaceful resolution to the sea row during his administration, what mattered now is to remain calm amid the crisis. There are presently no arrangements reached between the Philippines and China when it comes to joint exploration activities for oil and gas at the diplomatically strained sea. The two countries signed a memorandum of understanding on joint oil and gas development in the WPS in November 2018. Philippine and Chinese officials are still in the process of fleshing out possible details of any joint exploration venture. Meanwhile, the Vietnamese government said citizens and repatriated from Ukraine shall not be required to have proof of negative COVID-19 test, COVID-19 vaccination, and recovery from COVID-19, according to the latest regulations of the Ministry of Health. During the repatriation flights, they shall be required to strictly follow the ministry's 5K message. Khẩu trang, face mask, Phu Quan, disinfection, Phuang Kek, distance, Hong Tu Tap, no gathering, Khao Bai Ike, health declaration. Upon arriving in Vietnam, they have to take COVID-19 tests within 24 hours and self-isolate at their places of residence for 10 days. This regulation is not applicable to children under 2 years of age. If tested positive for COVID-19, they should immediately contact the nearest medical stations for timely support. There are about 7,000 Vietnamese living and working in Ukraine, said the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. More than 2,500 people have traveled to neighboring countries, including 1,700 in Poland, 290 in Hungary, 600 in Romania, and 40 in Slovakia. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is coordinating with relevant ministries, agencies, and airlines to arrange repatriation flights, with the first two scheduled on March 8 and 10 to bring home 553 citizens from Romania and Poland.
Meanwhile, Vietnamese Foreign Minister Bui Tan Son suggested that Poland provide shelters for nearly 1,000 Vietnamese and are on their way to Poland from Ukraine. The foreign minister made the suggestion while receiving chargé d'affaires of the Polish embassy in Vietnam, Maciej Duszyński, in Hanoi on Monday. Bui also asked the Polish side to create favorable conditions for arrangement of flights to repatriate Vietnamese from Poland. He took the occasion to express thanks to the government of Poland for having opened its border and providing shelters and other necessities to nearly 2,000 Vietnamese citizens who have reached Poland from Ukraine. Bui also treasured Poland's donation of 1.4 million AstraZeneca vaccine doses, 8 tons of medical supplies, and equipment worth $4 million to help Vietnam in the fight against the pandemic. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there are about 7,000 Vietnamese people living and working in Ukraine. At least 2,500 people have traveled to Ukraine's neighboring countries, including Poland, Romania, Hungary, according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Vietnam sent the first aircraft to Romania to bring home 283 citizens, and the next flight is scheduled March 10 to evacuate 270 others more from Poland. And the news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. We'll be right back.
Mr. Bawal, may ibis ka, oh. Asan? It's a prank! Okay lang manakot! Pero kung mananakot ka para sa boto, bawal yan!
Ayon sa Omnibus Election Code, threats, intimidation, terrorism, use of fraudulent device or other forms of coercion is an election offense.
Sino kausap mo? Makaalis na nga, sa iba na lang ako mananakot. Mr. Pwede! Mr. Pwede! May malaking ibis sa likod mo! Nox! Babawi ka pa, ha? Di mo ako maiisahan! Ako si Mr. Bawal na nagpapaalala sa inyo na ang pananakot para sa boto. Ibis! Uy! Bawal yan!
A public service message of Net25 for Mata ng Halalan 2022. Matatag, matapang, matapat.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo.
nakikita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba, sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Karapatan natin lahat na iboto ang karapat-dapat! Lahat ng Pilipino pwedeng bumoto!
Kung rehistrado ka.
Ha?
Ang lahat ng Pilipinong rehistrado lamang ang maaaring bumoto. 1 taon ang ibinibigay ng Commission on Elections para magparehistro ang mga Pilipinong boboto sa darating na eleksyon. Kailangan gawin ito para maiwasan ang tinatawag na flying voters. Teka, lahat ba kayo nagparehistro na?
Opo! Rehistrado kami lahat!
Bakit tahimik ka? Hindi ka nakapagrehistro, no?
Nakakalimutan ko.
Hindi ka pwedeng bumoto. Mabuti pa, bumili ka na lang ng balot.
Pagka kami pa bumili ng balot, pwede na kami bumoto.
Hindi, pero mabubusog ka. Para sa karagdagang kaalaman, makipag-ugnayan lang sa pinakamalapit na barangay o bisitahin ang COMELEC website.
A public service message of Net25 for Mata ng Halalan 2022. Matatag, matapang, matapat.
Back here in the country, the number of new COVID-19 cases in the National Capital Region and 38 other areas under Alert Level 1 continues to go down, according to an Octa Research Group fellow on Monday. Since the group's prediction of less than 1,000 new cases by March, Dr. Guido David noted that the numbers might continue to decrease to a few hundred at the end of this month. Let's listen in.
Medyo nag-slow down yung pagbaba nila pero bumababa pa rin. Yun yung mahalaga. At yung prediction nga natin na less than 1,000 cases by March, ito nga, nakikita na natin ay nasa less than 1,000. Inaasahan natin na patuloy pa itong bababa by end of March. Posibleng baka mga a few hundreds na lang yan, baka 300 to 500. Tulad na nakita natin noong December last year bago pumasok yung Omicron. Para mapatuloy natin yung pagbaba ng bilang ng kaso, kailangan pa rin sumunod tayo sa minimum public health standards. Yan yung mga isa sa mga rason kung bakit mabilis na bumaba yung bilang ng kaso natin noong mga nakaraan na buwan at linggo. Pero syempre, hindi tayo sigurado. Baka dahil hopefully not na baka medyo nagiging kampante yung mga iba nating kababayan. Andiyan pa rin yung virus. So sana patuloy pa rin yung, yun nga, at least yung pagsuot ng face mask, ito ay napakahalaga. Ang malaking tulong nito para mapigilan yung infection.
To continue the decrease in cases, the group said the public must continue adhering to minimum public health standards. He said there could be more areas that are qualified to de-escalate to Alert Level 1, considering the low number of new cases and healthcare utilization rate nationwide. However, there are areas with very low vaccine coverage. One of the metrics used by the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases and the Department of Health in the Alert Level System classification. Despite the decline in COVID cases, the Department of Labor and Employment reminded anew both employers and employees of the strict observance of health protocols inside workplaces under the most relaxed Alert Level 1. Dole also said that companies may still implement work from home arrangement if needed. Take a look.
Prior to COVID, naglabas na po ng Telecommuting Act. Ito yung Republic Act 11165. At nung linabas po ito, ang problema nun, yung traffic at yung kahirapan ng pag-commute, yung haba ng oras ng commute. Kaya with the use of technology, nandun yung alternative work arrangements na inallow na by the law, and ang DOLE ay gumawa na ng Department Order 202-2019 na nagbibigay ng yung mga parameters for these alternative work arrangements. So during COVID, nakita din po natin na marami sa mga kasamahan natin sa paggawa ay talagang mas nagiging effective ang work from home. At hindi mo natin matatanggal yon sa management na kung nakikita naman nila na maayos ang work from home output and productivity and delivery, pwede po naman nilang sundan, ay gawin pa rin ito. Naiintindihan ho natin si Secretary Lopez kasi mas maraming tao sa labas, mas maganda rin po yung tinatawag na foot traffic, yung para sa economy, mas makakaikot po yung mga tao, makakabili. Pero meron din ho tayong tinitignan na prerogative ng management for the work from home. Hindi ho, kaya nga, sinasabi natin, hindi ho lahat ay pwede mag-work from home. Meron ho talagang kailangan mag-work on-site para mas maganda naman ho talaga ang servisyo ng isang kumpanya. Pero pwede pa rin i-allow on a management prerogative and voluntary agreement with the workers na magpa-work from home pa rin naman po.
Maraming salamat po. Nag-ingat na rin po tayo sa mga magturumon.
Bali on Monday scrapped quarantine for vaccinated tourists from more than 20 countries and reintroduced visas on arrival as the Indonesian holiday island pushes ahead with reopening after 2 years of COVID curbs. Let's watch it. The loosening comes as a wave of Omicron infections wanes across the Southeast Asian archipelago, and after some international airlines resumed direct flights in recent weeks. ICOD President Joko Widodo has agreed to trial a no quarantine policy for overseas travelers to Bali starting on March 7. According to Maritime Affairs and Investment Minister Luhut Binsar Panjaitan in a briefing. Visitors will be exempt from isolation if double jabbed and holding a negative PCR test. They will have to show proof of a 4-day hotel booking. Visas on arrival were suspended 2 years ago when the pandemic first hit Indonesia, but will again be available to travelers from 23 nations, including Australia, the United States, Britain, Japan, and France. ICOD, if this trial succeeds, we will implement a quarantine-free policy to travelers from all countries by April 1 or even earlier, according to the minister. Bali Governor Wayan Foster on Friday said the reforms were critical to reviving the tourism sector, which used to be the island's largest source of income. President Duterte urged the next administration to adopt good practices that are currently being implemented in the fight against COVID-19, noting that this would come in handy should there be another global health threat in the future. Duterte made this remark after Health Secretary Francisco Duque III attributed the decrease in COVID-19 infections in the country to vaccination, natural immunity, and compliance with minimum public health standards.
Because there is no telling that one of these days, another vicious virus will visit the country or the world all over. At panibagong ano ito, far different from what we have now. Gusto ko lang malaman na what caused, I said, the numbers to go down, because it would come in handy. It would be very important to remember now the days that we allotted the vaccinating program para for the next, just put it at the back of our minds para malaman, we will not be facing the problem. I mean, it would not be us who would face that problem anymore. But the incoming or whoever wins, dapat malaman nila ito na the good practices of the Philippines. Okay, it's quite impressive that given the population compared to the others, and knowing how, for example, in Malaysia, in Singapore, they are quite strict, Vietnam, in the observance of the law and regulations. Kaya nga ang tatanong, because in the matter of just wearing the mask, you cannot just ignore it in Singapore nor in Malaysia because you really get arrested. Parang pagbatas, di mo batas talaga. Dito, I appreciate the decorum adopted by our law enforcement. Parang tinatapik lang na wag mo na lang ulitin. Parang ganun. It's not really important. It is important for the compliance of the law.
Finally, in line with the priorities of ASEAN Work Plan on Youth 2021 to 2025, particularly on youth participation and engagement, Alzheimer's Disease International, or ADI, and ASEAN joined forces in a webinar on intergenerational collaboration for ASEAN community building. Dementia is your business too. Over 80 representatives of ADI and its youth members, representatives of ASEAN senior officials meeting on youth, or SOMI, youth leaders, health practitioners, and like-minded organizations gathered to exchange knowledge and experience on the youth's role as caregivers and leaders of awareness-raising and outreach initiatives. Take a look.
Like other serious infections, COVID-19 may increase risk of cognitive impairment. The causes of young onset dementia are similar to the diseases that usually causes dementia in older people. However, dementia in younger people often has different symptoms, even when it's caused by the same diseases in the older people. Building on the active role of ADI in initiating conversation of youth-led efforts on dementia and Alzheimer's disease in ASEAN, we should use this opportunity to bring in our young people and call for their leadership and creativity that will eventually help us to protect our loved ones and the communities from the disease.
My experience as a young caretaker is a mix of both good and bad. It is stressful because there are times where I feel as if there's too much to handle, where I am still a student handling my own fair share of work and personal problems. It is also rather time-consuming, as there are a lot of things for one to handle, and oftentimes my family and I do not leave my grandmother alone, and there are shifts where we are all responsible to look after her regardless of our schedule. Now, when I mean emotional, I meant it in a way that it saddens me to so much to the point that it is almost unbearable at times to see someone I love and care about, someone that raised me up as a child, to who I am today, to no longer being able to hold on to any conversation properly. Now, I know that we can't change what has already happened. So rather than dreading over what happened, I would rather live in the moment. So for that, I'm still joyful that my grandmother is still around here. And though she might not be able to hold a conversation properly anymore, at the very least, she can still talk from time to time. And to see her smile, now that is truly joyful to me and comforting. And to be honest, oftentimes it makes my day to see her smile.
As I mentioned, the importance of youth engagement, it's actually solving the global burden of dementia. It requires an intergenerational approach. We totally support the components that Dr. Roger earlier mentioned, that there's opportunities on health and well-being between ADI and ASEAN, and the participation and engagement. And these engagement and volunteerism playing an important role in either promoting gadget, IT literacy, multi-talented workforce, and all those.
And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Gila, for keeping me company today here on ASEAN in Focus. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Alma, also for having me today. And this is Zila Pablo from your Thailand Bureau. And we live in interesting times.
We'll see you back tomorrow, same time, same place, here on ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in interesting times.
Totoo ang power of love.
I love you too. I love you too. Mahal na mahal kita sobra.
Oo na, sige na.
Kahit imposible